Hey folks, welcome back to the channel, and today I want to talk about The Alloy of Law, the fourth Mistborn novel and the first of a new series, a new sub-series, you can say. So I think the story of how this novel came to be is pretty widely known at this point, so I won't bother to rehash it. If you don't know and you're curious, you can pretty much just Google it and find out what Sanderson had to say about this. But essentially, this wasn't planned, and you can kind of tell from this book because first and foremost, this book is like a Western shoot 'em up action adventure. Like in terms of like theme, style, atmosphere, everything, it's very different from the initial Mistborn trilogy. So if you just come fresh off of those and you dive straight into this, you're in for a very different type of story. Like this book is even a fraction of the size of one of those Mistborn books. It's very different. So this takes place a couple hundred years after the end of the Hero of Ages, and society has progressed quite a bit under the guidance of a particular individual, um, under the guidance of the Hero of Ages. Let's see. Um, and what's changed? So, actually, before I get into what's changed, let's talk about this story. So, the main protagonist of this story is Waxilium Ladrian, who, if the last name sounds familiar, that's because this is Breeze's descendant, and he essentially, as a young adult, he left the capital city. He went out into essentially the frontier, and he started off as a bounty hunter, and became basically a lawman. And 20 years later, when his uncle passes away in an accident, he returns back to the capital city to essentially assume his place as the 16th Lord of House Adrian. 16, we know, is a significant number in the Cosmere. So that was a nice little touch there. Anyway, so he has trouble adjusting to this back home to his new responsibilities after 20 years living a very completely and utterly different life than what high society is. And pretty much around the same time as when he comes home, like a series of train robberies start, and these train robberies happen under very mysterious and very dramatic circumstances. And obviously he gets roped into it when he gets roped into it, and the novel is essentially a shoot 'em up mystery between him and this gang of robbers. Well, after he gets roped into it, and that's pretty much what it is. Like first and foremost, this reads like a pulp kind of sword and sorcery adventure minus the sword. Swap the sword for guns, and that's it. That's essentially what this book feels like. There are seeds planted that point towards there being a larger overarching plot, but not very many. Not so much. This book it is very much just a shoot 'em up adventure. Like this is about as close to a popcorn read as you can get in this setting, essentially. And so how has the world changed in these last couple of hundred years? So essentially, full Mistborns and full ferrochemists, they're no longer a thing. Instead, the magic users in this world, they're now divided basically into three camps. On the well, I shouldn't say they're no longer a thing. They're extremely rare. Let's put it like that. Like born once every couple generations, that kind of rare. Magic users in the metallic arts users in this world are essentially split into three camps. There are mainly mistings, who we know from the first trilogy are basically just allomancers who could use one metal. They can burn one metal. We have ferrings, who are the ferrochemist equivalents. They can only tap one type of metal mine. And then we have twinborn, which is who is a person born with both a single allomantic and a single ferrochemic ability. So they can basically combine their skill sets and in pretty interesting ways. And it goes a little bit deeper into that, but I'll leave that for you to read and find out. But yeah, that's it. And then following the events of the Hero of Ages, like the world was basically remade, and it's a drastically different world. Like civilization has progressed tremendously from essentially like a feudal dark ages kind of thing. Like there's this is set in roughly the equivalent of like I think it would be 19th century, so 1800s technology, effectively. And it, in addition to that type of technology, like the social structure is um, kind of mimic that. And yeah, that's pretty much all you really need to know about the setting. Like I said, this is first and foremost shoot 'em up. The the main character is Wax. He was an interesting character to read about because like the majority of this novel was just him returning to the capital city, struggling with the fallout of a death that occurred right before he came back, and just struggling to adjust to high society and the completely different lifestyle that it is from what he's led so far. And he typically responds in a way that's meant to emphasize his difference. And yeah, the other character who we follow for the most part is his deputy Wayne, who is one of the more interesting characters in the series. Like Wayne is intended to be the comic relief. The only problem is that Sanderson absolutely sucks at comedy. Like for every one humorous moment, you have to endure like maybe 20 that make you want to wash your eyes with bleach, um, to put it mildly. So, but outside of that, Wayne is a pretty interesting character because both Wax and Wayne, they're twin born, so they have different allomantic and ferrochemic abilities, and the way that they're used in this novel is just so interesting. It's just so fun to read. Like the action sequences, honestly, they're very different from what you would have read in the initial Mistborn trilogy, because in addition to guns being a thing now, you have characters who can typically tap into these two different abilities, and the way these abilities interact and can impact a fight is interesting, to say the least. On top of that, another advancement that was made is that in the initial Mistborn trilogy, we knew about 10, I think about 10 different elements. All 16 are known in this current time frame, and the new powers are very, very interesting. Like they have very significant ramifications on the story, and the way they're used is just really creative. So there's that. The third character who we spend a lot of time with is Lady Marassi, who is Wax's potential future sister-in-law. Um, Potential future in-law, I should say. And she's essentially a character she's studying at the university. She's studying criminal justice. So of course, to basically meet a legendary lawman like Waxen and his deputy, it was like a real interesting moment for her. And then of course she gets embroiled in their adventures, and she doesn't just sit back. Like as much as she's inexperienced, she also has some interesting skill sets that do have a very heavy impact on the story as they go through. So an interesting new cast of characters, with the exception of Wayne. And it's hard not to like Wayne. It's just the humor is terrible with him. Like they were pretty fun to read about. At the end of the day, like this is very much a light-hearted, fun, adventurous novel, and that just comes across throughout this. Like what else can you really say about this book? That's pretty much all it was meant to be. Like it's just like a fun adventure set in the Mistborn world. Not much else I can really say about it. It is the start of a quartet, and interesting things happen over the course of this quartet. Like this is not my first time reading this series. I think this will be my second read through, and this book in particular, it stands out for me because even with the rest of the quartet, it's very different in terms of just like the tone. it's just light. It's just more light-hearted. It's just more action-packed. It just has different goals. As much as the seeds are planted for a larger story to be told, it's not particularly relevant to this book. And yeah, like if you're a fan of the Mistborn world, you definitely want to try this book so you can see how much the world has changed since that initial trilogy. There may be changes you like, there may be changes you hate, but there will be interesting changes to say the least. And yeah, like that's all I have to say about the Ally of Law. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.